The last thing that we're going to look at in this course is the paperwork and the record keeping. So we have our director's file, we have a body of work that we've completed throughout this course, and now how do we keep track of our paperwork, especially when it comes to licensing? So I'm going to go over the records that we need for licensing. That's going to be a big majority of this, and this is based on the form 311A from licensing and what it covers. So having this is a really great place to start if you are a new director or new to a site and familiarizing yourself with what you need for your program. And then just generally for anybody having that around so that you know that you're on top of all of your paperwork. So we're going to go over paperwork and then running. You see like what other types of things do you need to keep your early childhood education program up and running, and then also the importance of like posting our paperwork so that licensing can see it, because that's a big area where we get deficiencies. So keeping your files organized and keeping necessary records available and accessible is going to save daily time and stress for you. So during inspections by licensing, or if you're becoming accredited, it's more vital that you have your files stored accurately and efficiently. So here is a link to the licensing 311A, which is a PDF, but what it's called is records to be maintained at the facility. This is so huge. What this is all of the things that you need and the things that you need to post. So we're gonna talk about child's records, personnel records, administrative records, and then the documents to be posted. I'm not covering every single thing. I'm talking about the biggest things that have been identified by licensing or by other programs as areas where we have deficiencies in them. So like I talked about a couple weeks ago, licensing has this big form and it talks about all the deficiencies that they see at centers. So I'm going to be talking about that when it comes to record keeping and the things that you need to place some emphasis on in order to keep all of your records up to date. But you need to actually look at the licensing 311A form to make sure that you have all of those records, since I'm not going to be covering all of them. So when it comes to child records, a big thing is plans, another one is medicine, and another one is health. So those are the areas that you're going to want to make sure that you have your records up to date for each individual child in your program. Also, personal rights. This needs to be signed and dated, because I'm hearing from more and more of people in the community that the personal right issues is becoming something that analysts are looking for. So that kind of means that a child has some autonomy within the classroom, and that's why plans are important and programs should be somewhat individualized and specific to the needs of the child. But just knowing and reading that and then making sure that it's signed and dated is going to be really important as well. It's something that I've heard analysts are looking for, and then they're also wanting to make sure in the classroom that the personal rights of the child are being honored. So personnel records. So this includes TB tests, health screening, and then a signed copy of employee rights, which I've also linked to, and then CPR and first aid. So this is the area where per licensing, you need to read this and make sure that you have all of the parts of the personnel records and they're accounted for and they're organized as well. But these are the things that licensing has identified as issues. TB tests, because a lot of times it will go a year and people will not remember, and they won't go and they won't get an updated TB screening. And then health screenings as well. All employees need to have a health screening, and then CPR first aid, same type of thing. They expire. We're not exactly sure what day, or we get the month off. I just did that recently. I thought it was the end of January. It was the beginning of January. So I actually don't have to be CPR and first aid trained at this point for the jobs that I am doing, but I do keep it current because I think it's important, and I'm around enough children that it is important. So I was lucky in that there was nobody looking over my shoulder, but I mean, I'm not practicing what I preach in that case because I missed it by like 4.5 weeks or something like that. So these are the things that you need to look at the personnel records, make sure that you have all of them, but these are the areas that we need to pay some extra attention to. So administrative records, so it's our admissions paperwork, sign in and out sheets. I know that's important to all of us, especially if we're state funded. And then our roster, that's really important too, that you have a current roster. And then facility responsibilities. So if I'm gone as the director, who's in charge? So it's really important that if you are not going to be on site, that somebody who has the required classes that they need can go ahead and be the responsible person for the facility. Documents posted in the facility, and once again, these are deficiencies that might be noted by licensing. Having your license posted, a personal rights form as well, a menu, so your current menu, even if it's cyclical and it doesn't change that much, you have the menu for this week posted, the schedule of the classrooms, and then the parents' rights poster. So these are some of the things that you have to have posted in your facility. And this is what has been noted by licensing as an issue, and so I wanted to bring it to your attention that these are some of the things you should focus on. So we're going to get away from what kind of licensing wants, and we're going to talk about just all the other paperwork that you have to have. So obviously it includes licensing like our previous pages, and there might be some overlap with the other paperwork, but then it also includes business. So that's our taxes, our receipts, our community contact stuff like that, and then things that we need for our teachers, and then things that we need from our teachers. So files, handbooks, lesson plan ideas, things like that. And then for families as well, what do we need for our families? Handbooks, parent education, customer service, paperwork, stuff like that. So there is going to be an overlap area between what licensing wants and then also what might be in your employee files, but you'll probably add to your employee files as well, according to what your program specific needs are. So applications, plans of action, signed copies of policy. There's going to be a lot of other things in our files that maybe licensing doesn't need to see. So some things that people do is they have a licensing file and then they have other files so that, you know, licensing isn't having to go through 90,000 other things in your files. So what do you need for business? Receipts. Receipts. So keeping track of what you buy, outgoing purchases, you know, those types of things are important. And your annual budget, your revised budget, your actual budget, copies of your taxes, copies of checks, accounts, payments, deposits, and you need to keep it for at least 7 years. And this is what is recommended by the IRS. It can be archived. It doesn't have to be right at your fingertips underneath your desk. It can be out in the shed or something like that. But keeping your receipts, if you are a business, for up to 7 years is really important. And then sign in and out sheets too. It kind of proves your enrollment, and it also helps you get a sense of enrollment in different kinds of months and years. So, you know, how is your January enrollment versus your June enrollment? Looking back over the last couple of years will help get a sense of how your program is performing. I recently became the treasurer for my daughter's PTO at their elementary school, and so I am learning a lot about copies of checks, accounts, and payments. So right now we have an online system, we have a kind of an Excel tracking system, and then we also have a paper system where any check that I write gets stapled to the invoice and then it gets filed away in a binder. Things that we have come in, also I receive all of that information. So I have kind of two different systems, a paper system and then an online tracking system of just the number values that we receive and what goes out. And that has been really helpful, is to have both of those. So consider an online or an electronic way of keeping track of your business along with the paper system. As far as paperwork, what do you need from your staff? You need weekly lesson plans, and this can be electronic or it can be submitted on paper. I kept them for a year. That might be a little bit excessive, but I like to kind of see what we were doing in a year and seeing if we were hitting our goals, especially as we were kind of emerging from creative curriculum into more of a Project Reggio approach. Seeing that transition over a year was really helpful for me, and it kind of gave me a sense of where we were going, where we were headed, and how we were doing. So it was a way for me to assess kind of our curriculum. I know that sometimes you do have to keep them for a year as well. When I first started out, it was literally I made photocopies and I had a big box and I kept them all. And now electronically, it's so much easier just to like either have them emailed to you and then print them out for the staff, and then just keep them in a file folder, or scan them if they're still handwritten and kept in some kind of file as well. Also for my staff, I need to make sure that I have signed copies of the policy and the handbook and any procedures that I have throughout the year. So as things change or when they're onboarded, I have copies indicating that they've read and they understand what I'm expecting from them in the classroom. And then we need our personnel file per the program requirements and licensing requirements, and it needs to be updated as needed. And then the director needs to manage the date of trainings like CPR, child abuse, in order to remain current. So I talked about how I just kind of missed mine in January, and so it's important as a director that you stay on top of it, because licensing will come and they will hit you if you've missed any of those requirements or health requirements as far as keeping people safe and healthy in the classroom. Then for my staff, what do I provide? So a library of ideas, either a Pinterest page or a literal library of books, so that they have ideas so that they can continue to provide great curriculum. I also provide to them policies and handbooks as needed. So when they onboard or throughout the year, I provide that information for them, and then training forms as well. So any kind of information that, if we reported child abuse, getting out, and they were, upset about it, that form, that required reading that I had for you guys when we talked about child abuse, about what happens next, how does child welfare services work, providing that type of stuff to help them learn more and maybe alleviate their mind when it comes to this child abuse. That's another thing that I need to be able to provide. And then classroom forms, sign in and out sheets weekly, health forms, field trip forms, lesson plans, stuff like that. So either creating them if they don't work, or just having quality copies of them for them to use. And then I need to make sure that in my classroom, we have all the posted forms on the bulletin boards. And then our checklist as well for my safety crew, if a kitchen crew, if I'm lucky enough to have them, and then also checklists for the classroom as well as about safety and health. So for families, I need to have information for just walk-ins or interested parties. So a brochure, a business card, a handout, some way to, if they've walked in or they've heard about me through word of mouth, I have something literally right there to give them, so that they have something to go away with, so that they will call me back and they have all of my contact information. It can even be an application, or talking about the enrollment process, something like that. You need to have that as well. So let's say a walk-in comes in, you give them a brochure, they come back and they say, we're super interested. You take them on a tour, and then you can start them on their application process. So you need to have an application as well. So even if a family walks in and in that moment they want to apply because they're applying everywhere because they need childcare yesterday, then starting them on that road and having that at the tips of your fingertips is going to be really important. And then a handbook and policy, so for when they do come and they are enrolled, we can tell them very specifically and very well what our handbook is. We created that a couple weeks ago. I hope you guys liked learning kind of a new format. And then our sign in and out sheets daily, so that parents, can tell us who is coming to pick up their children. Also, from our families, we need updated emergency cards and emergency contacts throughout the year. If you move, we need to know where you moved. If your phone number changed, we need to know what it is. If your best friend moved out of the country, we need a new best friend that's going to come and pick up your child. So record keeping, digital versus paper. So electronic versus paper. So as far as electronic paper and record keeping, you can set up or you can buy. And this is kind of records of enrollment. You can track children and requirements. It can assist you with HR. You can get classroom information checking, or keeping track of child records, stuff like that. So there's a wide variety of online systems that you can buy outright or you can purchase monthly in order to keep on top of this. Online banking, in addition to a budgeting system, can also keep you on track. Credit unions and places where you bank will have information as far as online banking, so you have at a moment's notice how much money you actually have and how much you can spend. Then there's a lot of HR systems as well, which we're probably already using, because payroll, employment, vacation time can be kind of tricky, and so most programs use some kind of system in order to do that. But some examples are the ProCare software, there's Brightwheel that does like classroom stuff, and then there's HR systems like ADP and APS, and most of us use one or the other of those. So those are an example of how electronic and digital record keeping can help us. It can be a little bit faster, it can be streamlined, it can take care of various types of things. The downside of this, or the weakness of this, is that it does cost money, so it's not just something that you can create on your own. You typically have a one-time purchase, or you have to pay for it by year. When it comes to paper, though, the strength obviously is that it's typically free to very low cost. And for some of us, it can be required that we do keep paper copies for certain agencies like licensing, state or federal funding bodies, stuff like that. And then it's a second layer of accountability. So as a treasurer, I was talking about with my business information, is that I've got kind of a paper binder where we track all of our receipts, the checks that we write, invoices that we receive, things like that. And then we also have an online kind of banking system that we get from our credit union. And then I also have like an online Excel sheet that I use as well that tracks just the number value, so I can then report that back to the PTO board. So that's a great way that I've remained accountable on kind of three fronts as far as the money that I receive, because it's really important that our children's school, kind of has this money. So then you still have to have paper kind of signed copies of most policies, procedures, handbooks on file, in a place, in a file folder, in a file cabinet, so that licensing can see all of these things. Or if you're talking with, or unfortunately terminating somebody, you can take out the handbook that they've signed, indicating that they know and understand and will implement all of these procedures, and tell them, you said that you were going to provide appropriate care for children. This is why you didn't, and this is why, your termination this is why you're going to be terminated from your job, something like that. So there are a lot of reasons that you need to have signed copies of policies and procedures. So other ways that we record keep and keep ourselves organized is Tom Copeland, who I've talked about a little bit throughout the class. He's kind of our guru of childcare and family childcare. He's very pragmatic and business oriented, but he actually has a lot of free resources, and then he has some ebooks and record keeping calendars that you can purchase. But he really talks about personnel and things like that. So if you go to his blog, he has a lot of like tax keeping information, personnel things, changes to personnel that you might need to be aware of, especially if you're in family childcare, because that's his targeted audience. I also saw on his blog recently that he's got a lot more pertinent and recent info and information and laws. So laws that are changing, then like he had this whole blog post on natural disasters, and like I guess you can deduct money, or you can, if things get damaged because of a natural disaster, how are you going to regroup your costs and contact insurance and stuff like that. So I thought that was a fantastic way that he's kind of meeting our needs, because he's from California, about our natural disasters, our recent wildfires, stuff like that. So he's somebody who you might want to check out his blog and learn some information, because he's got those free resources, or he's got some cheaper ebooks as well. Also has a set of YouTube videos, and so this is his top 3 record keeping tips for 2017. So he talks about tracking hours and pickup times and stuff like that. So in addition to his free resources and his ebooks, he also has these free resources on YouTube. So keeping really complete and honest records is necessary for the running of an early childhood education program. Not only do our government agencies like licensing require it, but our teachers, our staff, and our families rely on a director to have the necessary paperwork. So they want to be paid on time. They want to have the budget to be paid on time. And just in general, a teacher might come up to you and say, I need this lesson planning form. And if you can have it at the tips of your fingers, then you can give it to your staff really easily, and it won't cost you a lot of time out of your day. So same with families. Families want to make sure that there's going to be a center, so having the budget, having the appropriate budget keeping forms ready, being aware of the records that you need to keep so that you can keep the lights on in your facility. That's how our families depend on us to provide childcare. And then also, if somebody just wants to walk in, you want to have good enrollment numbers, so being able to give them a slick brochure or just some information on your program so that they come back and want to be in your program is going to be really important. So having papers, having them easily accessible and organized is really going to help you run your program. guys, we're almost done. This is our second to last week. So I have just finished with our course content for our PowerPoint, so please watch those, and you've watched part of them already. But please finish the extra credit about technology by December 6th. Finish the director's file by December 10th. And then I'm going to today open the review, so it's December 4th, and it will be open till Sunday 12/10. So what it is as a review is 8 questions. So I'm giving you 8 questions about a variety of things, from budgeting to working with staff and families. I'm going to pick 4. I'm going to pick 5 to be on the final exam. So each essay question is going to be worth 10 points for a total of 50, and I have 8 questions. So you're going to have a whole week to look at all 8 of those questions, write them down, save them offline, work on them, add to them, look at our PowerPoints again, read the additional readings, flip through the textbook, just go back and look at what we've learned through the entire course. Work on those 8 questions, and then on Monday, 12/11, I will release the final exam, which is 5 questions. It has to be done by Saturday, December 16th at 5 p.m. That is when our semester ends, is Saturday, December 16th. So I need everything to be put in by that day. I can't accept anything late. I'm going to have to be doing all of your grades all at once, and exams can be really difficult for me to go through. It'll probably take me 2 or 3 days to read through all of your final exams because they are essay questions. So I need them to be done by Saturday, December 16th. There'll be no discussion board, so you can focus on your director's file and then reviewing for the final. But the reading will be a sheet called Time Management for Directors, and it's from Wisconsin, from their licensing body. But it's got some really ideas on ways that you can manage your time. And then from Tom Copeland, I have 7 record keeping and tax tips for new providers. So just some extra information on record keeping and time management.